The world stopped when he said it. Those words, half whispered, half choked, hung in the air like smoke, curling around my heart and squeezing until I couldn't breathe. I stood frozen, my sneakers sinking into the damp grass of Riverside Park, as Ethan's green eyes locked onto mine, daring me to cross a line we'd both been circling for months. My name is Caleb Nguyen, a 24-year-old graphic designer scraping by in Syracuse, New York. I'd grown up in a tight-knit Vietnamese-American family, where silence was louder than words, and feelings were buried under expectations. Ethan Carter, 25, was the opposite, a free-spirited photographer with a laugh that could light up a room and a past he never talked about. We met at a local art gallery, where his photos of abandoned factories somehow spoke to the parts of me I kept hidden. He was all sharp edges and soft smiles, a contradiction that pulled me in like gravity. That October afternoon, the park was alive with the crunch of leaves and the distant hum of the city. We'd been walking for hours, talking about everything and nothing, his latest project, my overdue rent, the way the sky burned orange at sunset. Then, under the shade of a massive oak, he stopped. His voice dropped low, almost a growl. "Caleb, I'll let you do it, just don't tell the guys." My pulse roared. Do what? Kiss him? Hold him? Admit that every glance, every accidental touch, had been tearing me apart? The guys were our mutual friends, Jake, Marcus, and Liam, a crew of loud, loyal, straight dudes who'd never suspect the storm brewing between us. Ethan's words were a key, unlocking a door I wasn't sure I could walk through. Fear clawed at me. I'd spent years hiding who I was, dodging questions from my parents about girlfriends, lying to myself about why Ethan's presence made my chest ache. But desire was stronger, a wildfire that burned through my defenses. I stepped closer, close enough to feel the heat of his breath. "Ethan," I whispered, "what are we doing?" He didn't answer, just reached out and brushed his fingers against mine. It was electric, a spark that could ignite everything or destroy us both. We didn't kiss. Not then. Instead, we stood there, caught in a moment too fragile to hold. The park faded away. The joggers, the kids on bikes, the world beyond us. All that existed was Ethan's hand, trembling slightly, and the weight of what we weren't saying. I wanted to ask him why he was so scared, why he cared what the guys thought, but the look in his eyes stopped me. It wasn't just fear. It was shame, raw and jagged, like he was carrying something heavier than I could see. That night, I couldn't sleep. My tiny apartment, with its peeling paint and secondhand couch, felt too small to contain the chaos in my head. Ethan's words played on repeat, each syllable a question mark. What did he want? What did I want? Growing up, I'd learned to compartmentalize. Family in one box, friends in another, and the truth about myself locked away where no one could find it. But Ethan was breaking those boxes open, and I wasn't sure I could put them back together. The next day, we met at a coffee shop on Salina Street, a gritty little place with mismatched chairs and the smell of burnt espresso. Ethan looked tired, his blonde curls messier than usual, like he hadn't slept either. "You okay?" I asked, stirring my latte until it was more foam than coffee. He shrugged, his eyes dodging mine. "Yeah, just thinking." I wanted to push, to ask what he meant by "don't tell the guys," but the words stuck in my throat. Instead, we talked about safe things, movies, the upcoming art festival, Jake's terrible taste in music. But every pause, every glance, felt like a conversation we weren't having. Over the next week, the tension grew. We'd hang out with the guys at Marcus's loft, playing pool or watching football, and I'd catch Ethan staring at me when he thought I wasn't looking. Once, when we were alone in the kitchen grabbing beers, his shoulder brushed mine, lingering just a second too long. My heart pounded so loud I was sure he could hear it. "You're killing me," I muttered under my breath. He smirked, but there was something sad in it, like he was fighting a war I didn't understand. Syracuse was a small city, but it felt smaller when you were hiding something. Everywhere we went, bars, galleries, even the damn grocery store, I felt like someone was watching, waiting for me to slip up. My parents had always been proud of me, their only son who made it in America, but they'd never understand this. And Ethan? He was a mystery. He'd grown up in a small town outside Buffalo, where being different wasn't just frowned upon. It was dangerous. He'd hinted at it once, mentioning a cousin who'd been disowned for coming out. I wondered if that's why he was so guarded, why his words in the park had been laced with fear. By the end of the week, I couldn't take it anymore. I texted him, "Meet me at the park. We need to talk." He didn't reply, but I knew he'd show up. He always did. That night, under the same oak tree, I faced him. The air was colder now, the leaves crunching underfoot. "Ethan, what's going on?" I asked, my voice shaking. "You can't just say something like that and pretend it didn't happen." He looked away, his jaw tight. "I don't know, Caleb. I can't lose them. The guys. My family. This life." His voice cracked, and I saw it. The weight of a secret he'd been carrying for years. I wanted to tell him it didn't matter, that we could figure it out together, but the words felt hollow. Because it did matter. To him, to me, to the world we lived in. But standing there, with the moonlight catching the edges of his face, I made a choice. I reached for his hand, not caring who saw. "We don't have to tell anyone," I said softly. "But we don't have to hide from each other." His fingers tightened around mine, and for the first time, I felt like we were on the same side of the line. The weeks that followed were a blur of stolen moments. Ethan and I found ways to be alone. Late-night drives to Onondaga Lake, quiet corners of the library, the back row of an indie theater playing artsy films no one else watched. Each touch, each whispered word, was a rebellion against the fear that still clung to us. But it wasn't enough. The secrecy was a weight, pressing harder every day, and I could see it in Ethan's eyes, the constant calculation, the dread of being found out. One night, at a dive bar called the Rusty Anchor, everything changed. The guys were there, as usual, laughing over cheap beers and a dartboard that had seen better days. Ethan and I were careful, keeping our distance, but I couldn't stop watching him. The way he leaned against the bar, his flannel shirt rolled up to his elbows, made my chest tighten. Marcus noticed. "Yo, Caleb, you good? You're staring into space like you're in love or something." The table erupted in laughter, and I forced a grin, but Ethan's face went pale. He excused himself to the bathroom, and I followed, my heart pounding. In the dim, graffiti-covered bathroom, he was leaning against the sink, his hands gripping the edge. "They're gonna figure it out," he said, his voice barely audible over the hum of the fluorescent lights. Marcus already suspects something. I wanted to tell him he was paranoid, that Marcus was just joking, but the truth was, I felt it too. The eyes, the whispers, the way the world seemed to close in when we were together. "We can't keep doing this," Ethan said, and my stomach dropped. "Not like this." I stepped closer, close enough to smell the cedarwood in his cologne. "Then what do we do?" I asked. "Pretend this never happened? Go back to being just friends?" The idea was unbearable, like cutting out a piece of myself. Ethan looked at me, his eyes searching mine, and for a moment, I thought he might kiss me. Instead, he shook his head. "I don't know, Caleb. I just know I'm scared." It was the most honest thing he'd ever said, and it broke something in me. We didn't talk about it again that night, but the crack in our fragile bubble was growing. The next day, I got a call from my mom. She wanted me to come home for dinner, a rare request since I'd moved out. When I arrived at the small house in Liverpool, the smell of pho filled the air, warm and familiar. But the conversation wasn't. "Caleb, you're not yourself lately," my mom said, her eyes sharp with worry. "Is something wrong? Are you seeing someone?" My dad, silent as always, watched me from across the table. I mumbled something about work stress, but the lie tasted bitter. I wanted to tell them about Ethan, about the way he made me feel alive, but the words wouldn't come. Ethan's life wasn't any easier. He'd moved to Syracuse to escape his hometown, but his family still called, asking when he'd settle down, when he'd find a nice girl. I saw the toll it took on him, the way his shoulders slumped after those calls. One night, as we lay on a blanket by the lake, staring at the stars, he told me about his cousin, Ryan. He came out when he was 17, Ethan said, his voice low. His parents kicked him out. He's in Chicago now, but he hasn't spoken to them in years. I reached for his hand, but he pulled away. I can't do that, Caleb. I can't lose them. The fear was real, but so was the pull between us. We started taking bigger risks, holding hands in the car, stealing kisses in empty parking lots. Each moment was a high, but it came with a crash. One night, at a gallery opening for Ethan's latest exhibit, I saw Jake watching us. Ethan had just laughed at something I said, his hand brushing my arm, and Jake's eyes narrowed. Later, he cornered me by the bar. "You and Ethan are tight, huh?" he said, his tone casual but sharp. I shrugged, my heart racing. "Just friends, man." But Jake's smirk said he wasn't buying it. The pressure was building, and I could feel Ethan slipping away. He started canceling plans, saying he was busy with work, but I knew better. He was pulling back, trying to protect himself. I couldn't blame him, but it hurt like hell. One night, I showed up at his apartment unannounced, a crumbling brick building near the university. He opened the door, shirtless, his hair damp from a shower. "Caleb, what are you doing here?" he asked, but his voice wasn't angry, just tired. "I can't keep pretending," I said, stepping inside. "I'm falling for you, Ethan, and I know you feel it too." He froze, his eyes wide, like I'd just shattered something. "You can't say that," he whispered. "You can't just make this real." But it was real, and we both knew it. I kissed him then, hard and desperate, and for once, he didn't pull away. The world outside his apartment didn't exist, just us, tangled together, hearts pounding. The kiss changed everything. It was a line we couldn't uncross, a truth we couldn't unsee. For a few days, Ethan and I were unstoppable, meeting in secret, stealing every moment we could. His apartment became our sanctuary, a place where the world's rules didn't apply. But the world always finds a way to creep back in. It started with a text from Marcus. "Yo, you and Ethan been weird lately. What's up?" I ignored it, but the unease settled in my gut. Ethan was jumpier too, checking his phone constantly, avoiding the guy's usual hangouts. One night, as we sat on his couch, a half-eaten pizza between us, he told me the truth. "My dad called," he said, his voice flat. "He heard a rumor from someone back home. About me. About us." My heart sank. Syracuse wasn't that big, and gossip traveled fast. Someone had seen us, maybe at the lake, maybe at the gallery, and now the walls were closing in. I tried to stay calm. "What did you tell him?" I asked. Ethan stared at the floor. I said it was nothing. That we're just friends. The words stung, even though I understood. His family was his anchor, the one thing keeping him grounded after years of feeling like an outsider. I wanted to be angry, to demand he choose me, but I couldn't, because I was just as scared. My parents' faces flashed in my mind, their disappointment a weight I wasn't ready to carry. The next week was torture. Ethan pulled back again, canceling plans, answering texts with one-word replies. I threw myself into work, designing logos for clients I didn't care about, trying to drown out the ache. But every night, I'd lie awake, replaying our kiss, the way his hands felt on my skin. I was falling in love, and it was tearing me apart. Then came the night that broke us. The guys planned a bonfire at Green Lake State Park, a tradition we'd kept since we started hanging out. Ethan didn't want to go, but I convinced him. "We can't hide forever," I said. "We'll just act normal." He nodded, but his eyes were distant. At the bonfire, the air was thick with smoke and laughter, the lake reflecting the flames. I tried to keep my distance, joking with Liam about his terrible aim with a frisbee, but I could feel Ethan's presence like a magnet. Jake was drunk, louder than usual, and he wouldn't let it go. "Caleb, man, you and Ethan are like glued together lately," he slurred, tossing a stick into the fire. "What's the deal? You guys got a secret or something?" The group laughed, but it wasn't funny. Ethan's face went rigid, and I felt the air shift. "Shut up, Jake," I said, trying to keep it light, but my voice betrayed me. Marcus raised an eyebrow. "Whoa, chill, dude. Just messing around." But Jake kept pushing. "Nah, for real, you two are acting weird. Spill it." Ethan stood up, his hands clenched. "There's nothing to spill," he snapped. "Drop it." The silence was deafening, the crackle of the fire the only sound. I wanted to say something, to defend us, but my throat closed up. Ethan stormed off toward the parking lot, and I followed, ignoring the guy's confused stares. In the darkness, away from the fire, Ethan was shaking. "They know, Caleb," he said, his voice breaking. "They're gonna figure it out, and then what? I lose everything." I grabbed his arm, desperate to keep him from slipping away. "You won't lose me," I said. "We can do this together." But he shook his head, tears in his eyes. "You don't get it. I'm not like you. I can't just be this person." He pulled away, and I let him go, watching as he disappeared into the night. The next day, Ethan didn't answer my calls or my texts. I went to his apartment, but he wasn't there. Panic set in, a cold, sharp thing that clawed at my chest. I drove to every place I thought he might be. The park, the coffee shop, the gallery, but he was gone. Finally, I got a text. "I need space." "I'm sorry." It was like a punch to the gut. I sat in my car, staring at the words, wondering how we'd gone from kissing in his apartment to this. The days without Ethan were a blur of gray. Syracuse's autumn turned cold, the vibrant leaves replaced by bare branches and biting winds. I went through the motions, work, meals, sleep, but it was like I was underwater, everything muffled and distant. The guys tried to reach out, but I dodged them, too raw to face their questions. My parents noticed too, their worried glances heavier each time I visited. I wanted to tell them everything, to unburden myself, but the fear of their rejection kept me silent. A week later, I saw Ethan's name pop up on my phone. My heart leapt, but the message was short. "Can we talk?" "At the park. Tonight." I didn't hesitate. When I arrived at Riverside Park, he was there, sitting on the bench under the oak tree, his camera resting beside him. He looked thinner, his eyes shadowed, but when he saw me, he smiled. A small, fragile thing that broke my heart. "I'm sorry," he said before I could speak. I freaked out. I didn't know how to handle this. I sat beside him, the bench cold against my thighs. "You can't just disappear like that," I said, my voice cracking. "I thought I lost you." He looked at me, his eyes searching mine. "I thought I lost myself," he admitted. "All my life, I've been running from this, from who I am. But when I'm with you, it's the only time I feel right." His words hit me like a wave, washing away the anger and hurt. I reached for his hand, and this time, he didn't pull away. "We don't have to have all the answers," I said, "but we can figure it out together, one step at a time." He nodded, tears slipping down his cheeks. For the first time, I saw him clearly, not just the photographer with the easy smile, but the man carrying a lifetime of fear and hope, just like me. We started small. We told Marcus first, over coffee at the shop on Salina Street. He was quiet for a long time, then shrugged. "You guys are still you. Just don't make it weird." It wasn't perfect, but it was a start. Jake and Liam were tougher, their jokes masking discomfort, but they came around, slowly. The world didn't end. The guys didn't abandon us. And while Ethan's family was still a hurdle, he started talking to his cousin Ryan again, finding strength in someone who'd walked the same path. Coming out to my parents was harder. I invited them to my apartment, my hands shaking as I set out bowls of pho. When I told them about Ethan, my mom's eyes filled with tears, and my dad left the room. For a moment, I thought I'd lost them. But the next day, my mom called. "We don't understand," she said, her voice soft. "But we love you. Bring Ethan to dinner next week." It wasn't acceptance, not yet, but it was a door opening. Ethan and I grew stronger, our love a quiet defiance against the world's noise. We still faced whispers, stares, moments of doubt, but we faced them together. One night, as we walked through Riverside Park, the same place where it all began, Ethan stopped. "I'm not scared anymore," he said, his voice steady. "Not with you." He kissed me then, under the oak tree, the moonlight catching the edges of his smile. It wasn't perfect, but it was ours. The world didn't collapse. It expanded, making room for us, for love, for the truth we'd fought so hard to claim. And as we stood there, hand in hand, I knew we'd keep fighting, for each other, for the life we deserved, for every moment that made the fear worth it.